Welcome to today's deep dive. If you're joining us, you are the learner. Someone who thrives on connecting the dots, gaining knowledge without all the overwhelm, and really just uncovering those hidden aha moments.
Absolutely.
And we have a highly specific mission today. We are exploring the intersection of modern real estate investment, urban revitalization, and lifestyle design. And we're doing it by putting a single century-old property right under the microscope.
Yeah, and to pull this off, we've assembled a pretty substantial stack of sources for you to analyze. We're looking at current live MLS data, so that's Zillow and Redfin, along with historical sales records provided by Realty World.
Right, getting into the hard numbers.
Exactly, and we're layering that hard data with neighborhood insights directly from the St. Clair Place Neighborhood Association, local municipal tax and zoning data, and to bring in the human element, a recent real estate blog post by a local Indianapolis broker, Cara Conde.
Yeah, she wrote about the philosophy of duplex living, which is fascinating.
It really is.
That blend of quantitative municipal data and, qualitative lifestyle philosophy is exactly what makes this so interesting. Our goal today isn't just to sell you a house. We are unpacking the real-world application of house hacking.
Right.
And if you follow real estate, you already know the premise. You live in one unit of a multifamily property and you rent out the other. But we want to look past the basic definition and see what a 100-year-old duplex in the Midwest can actually teach you about modern financial independence.
Not to mention the mechanics of forced appreciation.
Yes, forced appreciation and how physical architecture dictates community building. So, okay, let's unpack this. The asset at the center of our deep dive is located at 2626 E Michigan Street in Indianapolis.
Indiana.
Right, Indiana. We're looking at a 1.5-story duplex originally constructed in 1920. It features traditional vinyl siding and sits on a lot just over 5,000 square feet.
Which translates to about 0.12 acres.
Right. And the footprint includes a detached one-car garage, off-street parking, and a fully fenced backyard.
And inside, you're dealing with 2,097 total square feet divided into two completely separate mirrored units.
Each side is a one-bedroom, one-bathroom layout.
Yeah, and what jumps out immediately from the listing photos is that this is not some dusty, deferred maintenance property. It underwent a massive remodel in 2021. The aesthetic is highly modernized. You've got crisp white cabinets, a stylized brick backsplash, central kitchen islands.
It looks great. Furthermore, it's being sold completely turnkey and fully furnished, which drastically alters the immediate yield profile for a prospective buyer.
It really does, and the current condition makes the historical data from Realty World all more striking. If we rewind the tape to June of 2018, this exact property hit the market with a list price of $25,000.
$25,000.
Right. The listing notes explicitly stated it needed tender, loving care, which is essentially real estate shorthand for a distressed, potentially uninhabitable shell.
Oh yeah, TLC means bring your tool belt and a prayer.
Exactly. And it sold the very next month for $19,500.
Wow. 19.5. But fast forward to April of 2024, and that same property sold for $180,000. And today, as of March 2026, it's sitting on the MLS with a list price of $249,900.
$250,000.
Right. We're looking at an asset that went from under 20 grand to $250,000 in less than 8 years. I love a good surprising fact, and it would be incredibly easy to just chalk that up to macroeconomic inflation or maybe a localized housing bubble.
But the historical permit data tells a very different story.
Right. Why did it jump so much?
Well, the appreciation was systematically engineered through a heavy capital injection. The records show the roof was completely replaced in 2018, likely by that investor who bought it for $19,500. They needed to stabilize the envelope of the building.
Make sure it doesn't just rot away.
Exactly. And then 3 years later, the property was gutted. The 2021 remodel wasn't just a cosmetic flip with their new paint and cheap laminate flooring. They took the interior down to the studs, they replaced the legacy electrical systems, and installed all new HVAC infrastructure.
Which perfectly illustrates a dominant trend in urban real estate over the last decade. You have institutional and private capital sweeping into Midwestern markets, identifying these severely distressed century-old assets and deploying the capital expenditure required to basically rescue the structures.
Yeah, they're manufacturing turnkey income generators out of blighted properties.
Let's move into the strategy here, because the numbers on this specific listing offer a really compelling look at opportunity cost. At the current list price of basically $250,000, a standard 20% down payment requires just under $50,000 in liquid capital.
$49,980 to be exact.
Right. And factoring in current interest rates, hovering around 6 to 6.5%, the estimated monthly payment, and this includes principal, interest, taxes, and insurance lands, between roughly 1490 and 1630 a month.
So let's contextualize that $50,000 down payment. You could deploy that capital into an S&P 500 index fund and historically expect a 7 to 10% annualized return completely passively.
Sure.
But here, you're leveraging that 50K to control a $250,000 cash flowing asset. Because this property is sold fully furnished, the Redfin rental data estimates each unit can command $1,450 a month on the midterm or short-term rental market.
And there's the aha moment.
Right there.
If you execute the house hacking strategy and occupy one unit as your primary residence, your tenant's $1,450 rent payment covers nearly your entire mortgage obligation.
It's wild. Your out-of-pocket housing expense drops to a couple $100s a month, or potentially zero, depending on your exact interest rate.
You're effectively living for free while paying down the principal debt on the asset and capturing the long-term appreciation.
And if life circumstances change and you relocate, renting out both units generates a gross annual income of $34,800.
The cash-on-cash return potential is aggressive.
Right.
But, managing a rental property where you share a physical wall with your tenant introduces a fascinating psychological dynamic. Which brings us to Cara Conde's local real estate blog. She coined the phrase owner-occupied harmony to describe the lifestyle of Near East Side duplex living.
It's a great term. She makes a deliberate effort to reframe the landlord-tenant relationship. Instead of viewing a live-in tenant as a loss of privacy or a nuisance, she categorizes the arrangement as steady companionship.
Steady companionship.
Right. She argues that creating a micro-community of two households provides a shared sense of security. Because the architecture dictates completely separate entrances and distinct living spaces, you aren't sharing kitchens or bathrooms.
But the proximity allows for instant maintenance oversight without sacrificing the boundaries of a private home.
Exactly.
I find that steady companionship angle to be a bit of a double-edged sword, though. On one hand, having immediate oversight of your investment is a massive operational advantage. You don't have to drive across town to check if a pipe is leaking. You're already there.
You can address it instantly.
But, on the other hand, mixing business with that level of daily intimacy requires strict boundaries. I mean, if your tenant is your companion, how difficult does it become to raise the rent by 5% when the lease is up?
Or, in a worst-case scenario, initiate an eviction against someone you wave to every morning on the front porch.
Exactly. It demands a very specific personality type to manage that tension. You have to be comfortable being both a neighbor and a property manager simultaneously.
It is a highly intimate, low-maintenance way to build equity, but that human element cannot be ignored in your spreadsheet modeling.
And the viability of those 1450 rent projections relies entirely on the type of tenant you can attract, which requires us to look at who is actually moving to this part of Indianapolis. Let's zoom out from the parcel level and look at the broader St. Clair Place neighborhood. So what does this all mean for daily life?
Well, St. Clair Place is a vital piece of the Near East Side's history. According to the St. Clair Place Neighborhood Association, the area was established in 1880. Geographically, it's bounded by Rural Street to Tecumseh Street and 10th Street down to Michigan Street. It encompasses over 1,000 residential doors.
Okay.
And the association data explicitly highlights their organizational focus on historic preservation of the local architecture, strengthening community ties, and fostering social and economic diversity within the neighborhood.
That historical preservation is a major draw for the current buyer demographic, and you really see that reflected in the neighborhood's walkability metrics. We pulled the walk score data, and the property sits at a 59, making it somewhat walkable for daily errands. The transit score is a 42. But the bike score is a highly competitive 68.
And that bike score is the critical metric for understanding the localized rental demand.
Exactly, because you are steps away from the historic Arsenal Technical High School. And more importantly, that bikeability connects you directly to the cultural trail. A quick ride puts you in Fountain Square,
Which is widely recognized as Indy's premier hub for eclectic breweries, vintage retail, and contemporary art galleries.
Yeah, and you're also just minutes from the Bottle Works District Food Hall, the Mass Ave Entertainment Corridor, and Monument Circle downtown.
We're seeing a generational shift in housing preferences. A significant portion of renters and buyers are willing to trade suburban square footage for cultural density and urban connectivity. The Redfin Market Insights for the specific micro-location define it as a highly competitive seller's market.
Buyers are actively fighting over this specific pocket. The data shows homes frequently receiving multiple offers, going pending in an average of just 24 days.
And consistently selling at or above the list price.
It validates the thesis that proximity to cultural hubs like Fountain Square justifies the premium on these century-old structures.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because purchasing a 1920s asset in a highly regulated historic district comes with substantial fine print.
You really only uncover these variables by digging deep into the municipal and environmental data. For instance, despite the comprehensive 2021 interior remodel, the property records note the existence of an unfinished basement.
Right. And in real estate terminology, an unfinished basement is often pitched as a value-add opportunity. A space you can eventually finish to force the property's appreciation upward.
But in a 100-year-old Midwestern home, an unfinished basement is just as likely to be a damp, quirky maintenance puzzle. You're dealing with century-old foundation stones and moisture mitigation.
You absolutely have to underwrite for those contingencies. And speaking of underwriting for risk, the granular climate modeling provided by First Street gives us a very clear picture of the environmental realities of holding this asset long-term.
I took a close look at that First Street data in the Redfin listing. The modeling shows minimal risk for fire and wind events, which is great for your standard insurance premiums. However, there is a moderate flood factor.
Right. They're projecting a 20% chance of a flood event impacting the property over the next 30 years.
But the crucial detail here is that the property currently sits in FEMA Zone X.
Which fundamentally impacts the monthly cash flow projections?
Yes, because FEMA Zone X is designated as an unshaded, minimal risk area. This means the federal government does not require the homeowner to carry flood insurance to secure a federally backed mortgage.
Oh, okay.
If this property were in a high-risk Zone A, you'd be forced to purchase a policy that could easily add $100 or more to your monthly carrying costs, just destroying your cash-on-cash return. So while the 20% risk model is something to monitor, the immediate municipal designation keeps your overhead low.
That's a huge distinction. The climate data also models a moderate heat factor. First Street projects 7 days above 101 degrees this year alone, escalating to 19 extreme heat days annually over the next 30 years. Plus, there are expected to be 5 unhealthy air quality days this year.
As an investor, owning a century-old home means factoring those environmental realities into your operational budget. If you have a tenant paying $14.50 a month, they expect reliable climate control.
Definitely.
Those 101-degree days mean the HVAC system installed during the 2021 remodel is going to be running at maximum capacity. You have to factor accelerated wear and tear on that condenser unit into your long-term maintenance reserves.
So the environmental data dictates your operational budget, but the municipal data dictates your legal rights to the property. The Indy zoning browser reveals that 2626E Michigan Street sits inside a complex web of municipal overlays. You're buying into a historic preservation district and a transit-oriented development overlay.
That transit-oriented overlay is a fascinating mechanism. Municipalities use them to encourage higher density and walkable infrastructure near public transit corridors.
Which generally boosts long-term property values.
Right. But combining it with a historic preservation overlay means your ability to alter the exterior of the property is severely restricted. You cannot simply tear down the vinyl siding and put up modern corrugated steel without navigating a labyrinth of local architectural review boards.
Yeah.
You have to ensure you're maintaining the 1880s character of St. Clair Place.
It's a trade-off. The final and perhaps most impactful piece of fine print we need to analyze is the tax history. We discussed the staggering price appreciation from 1905 to $250,000.
Yeah.
While the local tax assessor tracked that exact same trajectory, the public records show that in 2015, the annual property tax bill for this duplex was just $951.
Under $1,000.
By 2024, that annual obligation had surged to $3,216.
Wait, a 300% tax increase in under a decade? If I'm a buyer building a 30-year financial projection, how am I supposed to model for that kind of municipal volatility?
It's tough.
That rising tax bill is the stark, unglamorous reality of buying into a revitalizing neighborhood. The assessed value, the baseline the city uses to calculate your taxes, jumped from $47,000 to $129,600.
As the surrounding area becomes more desirable, your localized tax burden scales with it, constantly eating into your rental margins. It forces you to continually optimize your rental strategy to keep pace with the municipal carrying costs. You can't just set the rent at 1450 and forget about it for 5 years.
So let's synthesize all of this for you. Why does this matter? Even if you never buy property in Indianapolis, why should you care about the granular tax history or the HVAC capacity of a specific duplex on Michigan Street?
Good question.
Because this property serves as a masterclass in modern housing strategy. It's a live, verifiable case study demonstrating how a distressed 1920s shell can be methodically repurposed into a highly efficient, turnkey financial tool.
It proves that with the right capital injection, physical architecture can be leveraged to drastically lower your personal cost of living while anchoring you in the cultural fabric of a historic neighborhood.
This deep dive really challenges the traditional narrative surrounding personal finance and home ownership.
It does. It shows that achieving financial independence doesn't always mandate retreating to a low-cost rural area or grinding through a 40-year career solely to service the debt on a massive suburban single-family home.
Sometimes it means getting creative. It comes down to creative spatial allocation, finding a multifamily structure, understanding the municipal overlays, running the environmental risk models, and making the building's footprint generate your equity.
You're shifting the paradigm from being a mere consumer of housing to an operator of a microasset.
Precisely. You let the architecture of the building work for your bank account.
Which leaves us with a critical question to mull over as you navigate your own financial and geographic goals. As major urban centers continue to revitalize and prioritize transit-oriented density, and as traditional single-family homes increasingly price out the average buyer, will the house-hack duplex become the default starter home of the 21st century? And if your path to living mortgage-free requires sharing a wall with a rent-paying tenant, how does that physical proximity permanently alter your fundamental relationship with the concept of home?